those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of Behind the Door. My name is Brian Black, and with me is Jason Wilson. Hello, Jason.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Hanging in there stuff.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Along with us, two wonderful fellows, is the great writer of today's episode, Augie Peterson. Hello, Augie.
Hi. Dying laughter over here. Hello.
Ain't no problem, Augie. It's all good.
You don't have an episode of The Grey Rooms without death. And so, with that note, we have lost our writer. You can't talk, Augie. You're dead.
Oh, darn. Okay.
And with us is the ever so wonderful David Steele, whom we killed yet again. Hello, David.
Yes. I'm happy to hear you killed the writer this time. That's good.
Yeah. Well, we kill a little bit of everybody.
Yes.
I don't think we've killed
Red
Jason
Brown.
yet. Jason, have we killed you? I don't think so.
Yeah, I was Raymond.
I was just going to say,
yeah,
I didn't
girl.
read
That's right.
Yeah, I was killed quite a lot, actually.
I mean, Sarah Ruth Thomas is doing such a great job. I just completely forgot about Raymond. Oh, geez.
Trust me.
Bob would be devastated.
Right after the finale, I was like, okay, time to etch a sketch that out of my mind. I'm ready to shit it out.
And this, everyone, is another lovely episode of Behind the Door. And, the one thing that we really like about the show is we get such a wonderful perspective, both from writing, from voice acting, from creating our wonderful podcasts. And so we're going to jump in and start with our questions. Is everybody ready?
Yes.
I'm ready.
We need to do a trivia episode one day.
Dude, that'd be
sweet.
amazing.
Oh, geez, wrong answer. Oh.
Well,
You
Jason
like
can
your
put
chair.
Jason can put in sound effects too. So
A new car.
He's done it once. He can do it again.
get like a little Muppet type sound. Oh man, this is gonna be great. So Augie, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Your story, it feels like a true crime documentary in a lot of ways. But let me ask you something. What made you want to tell your story and let it open up to be a werewolf story?
Okay, so the process of me writing this particular story for the Grey Rooms was quite a roller coaster because I had initially planned on writing a completely different story. And I had put like weeks of planning into it, and it was going to be awesome and long and like really great, but like it just wasn't coming to me all as one piece, and it wasn't quite ready yet. It still needed to stew. So instead, and this I guess kind of needs some background to it. My husband's family is in the fire service, and at the time of me writing this story, we had our power shut off, and we had not had power for like an entire month because our bill was so crazy high, and it was a whole thing. If you're curious, I talk about it on my podcast if you need that drama in your life. But basically, we were living at my in-laws' house for that time period, and I was also working on the second edition of my short story collection, and I was putting out regular podcast episodes trying to feel normal, and I was working on this story. So while I was there and I was mulling over this other story and I didn't want to write it before it was done, I was listening to the scanner that is constantly going in his parents' house. Like, it's just sitting on a bench. For anyone who's not familiar with what I'm talking about, if you're in like emergency services, typically you have a radio that will alert you if you have like a call coming through. And I was sitting in the living room trying to think of what in the world I was going to do because the deadline for the story was like 3 days away. So I was thinking and I was like, I don't know, this is so weird. And all of a sudden, unfortunately, this is based on kind of real life experiences, a suicide attempt came over the radio. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. there. And it just all unfolded. And I was like, oh my God. So, like, the suicide attempt was some woman who didn't want to become the werewolf that she somehow became. And then, like, her wife tried to stop her from attacking herself. And then she turned into a werewolf because she was angry. And it just, I don't know, it's just like all completely unfolded after I heard the word suicide attempt, which is so messed up. But that's what happened. I just heard over the scanner and I was like, yep, screw that other story. I'm going to write this instead. So I wrote it in 3 days and sent it in, and somehow it got accepted.
Cool.
Yeah. And I thought it was like kismet because my brain just thought
Yeah.
werewolf. And then I realized that the last story that you guys took from me was about vampires. So now I'm just the person who writes about classic monsters, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. We were even mentioning, well, we need some more monster stuff. Oh, here's Augie.
Yep. And I submitted another one for season 3. So, well, fingers crossed.
Is it a monster story?
It is. It's about evil mermaids.
Oh,
Ooh.
wow. Look at that.
Mhm.
Under the sea.
Well, it's in a lake, but you know,
Under the sea.
It
Jam
has
on me,
Ursula
little
in it,
death
doesn't
metal
it?
on that.
I cannot say.
That's awesome. So when the story opens up, it literally just comes down with, so it was about 10 p.m. And then it just jumps right into the middle of the cop telling his story to the psychiatrist.
Mhm.
It drops us right into the story. And I thought it was fantastic. I really did,
Aw.
because it immediately sucks us into what's going on. And, most stories kind of give you some kind of buildup. This doesn't even bother. It's like, what happens.
Mhm.
You've seen
Yeah.
every true crime documentary ever made. This is what this. So then, of course, you go on with the whole story. But I just had to ask, what made you decide to go that route? I mean, you told us that how you got the idea,
Mhm.
but how did you decide to kind of like focus on the cops and then have the cop telling a psychiatrist everything? How did that all come about?
So I literally just wrote the first few sentences about them being in a cop car and hearing that there was a suicide attempt because that was what inspired the whole thing. And then it just completely happened kind of on its own after that. And a lot of the times recently, I've noticed that I've been listening to horror stories, like narrations and stuff. There's always this long, drawn out setup of all the characters. You get to meet everybody, and then the story happens, and you're kind of told, how to care about the characters. But I like the idea of not knowing who to root for, and I kind of wanted to just present all of the characters as they were and then have the story unfold around them so you could kind of figure out after the fact, after you've kind of found out what these characters' quirks are and how their personalities work together, who it is that your favorite is, or, who you'd be rooting for. And maybe there's more to this than you had initially imagined. So I kind of just wanted to throw you in there because, when you're on a call like that, it's intense and you don't know what's going on until you've been there for a few minutes and you're finding out gradually, this thing over here started this fire and then it spread here and then it went up there. And that's why it looked as terrifying as it was, all because some kid was playing with a fork, So it just kind of, yeah, it turns it from this big thing into this kind of smaller thing. And I wanted to emulate that in the story itself. But it didn't really because it turned into a bigger thing afterwards. But I guess that's not the point.
Well, it definitely caught them off guard, the cops. So
Yeah.
I think that was good.
That's true, yeah. They all thought it was over, and then it wasn't.
So let's go along to David Steele here. Dave, we had you on season 1 as the lead voice actor for Ice Station Bravo. And you played a
Yes.
stone cold soldier that had to escape after all his friends were turned into some nasty zombie type monsters.
Yeah.
Now you're fighting werewolves. What's that like?
From one frying pan to the other. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny because I think I talked about this last year, but I'm a retired Army as well. Jason, I know, is military. We had a conversation,
Cool.
and yeah, I'm airborne infantry, and now currently I'm actually a state police dispatcher. So I've
Oh
also,
wow.
it's funny you're talking about the scanners stuff.
Look at
Um,
that.
I'm used to, attention to detail and focus and knowing your environment and your surroundings. And so but having these two situations is really cool. So it's exciting for me. I had a blast.
Oh wow.
You know what's funny too is Graham actually is the both times he's the one that gave them to me, and he might have given me three different stories. One of them I was like, not too hip on that, but these two, when I read them over, scanned them, I'm like, oh yeah, I got excited. I was, man, I hope I get this. I definitely want to do this. That's
Oh
where I'm
Nice.
at.
wow.
He is our Resident Evil guy.
the
Action hero kind of dude.
Yeah.
This this is David Steele. Yeah, I'm here to take on the werewolf.
Well, what's funny
biggest
is
compliment ever.
we had that mid-season story, and David Steele was our
Oh my
like
god.
Arnold Schwarzenegger kind
Yes,
of
I
like
love
guy.
that. It was so
Oh, I
stupid.
forgot about that. I
Like, who
truly
is your
did.
daddy and what does he do?
Yeah, David was doing a lot of fun things. He really
That was
was.
fun.
So Dave, there are a lot of cop stories, but I feel like the cop interview story is a little bit different to create a
Yeah.
voice for. You're in charge of dictating pretty much the sound of everything. So,
Mhm.
how did you go about making an interesting voice to tell such a crazy story to your psychiatrist?
Well, definitely, I had to read through the script one time, uh, at least. I kind of went through the whole thing in detail to get a feel of how the whole thing was going to go from beginning to end. And then I literally like tried, just as an actor, I tried to imagine myself as that guy, and I tried to uh, picture going through that experience, and now obviously it's over, and now I'm talking to someone about it. And I remember when at first I didn't get that, I didn't know where it was going, and that it was actually like that interview type thing. The final, verdict there, the final version was where I kind of got that idea, and put myself in that place and try to get that emotion where, as a police officer, I have a job to do. I don't want to even talk to this lady. I know I'm being forced to talk to the psychiatrist. This is not of my own will.
I'm so
They're
glad
making
you
me
brought
do
that
it.
up. That was
Oh yeah,
exactly what
totally.
I was going for because he's just being like debriefed after
Yeah,
the whole thing and
yeah,
he's forced to be there. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. No, I totally got that. Being in this environment, so I knew it was like a
Mhm.
debrief thing. I had to do it. I'm being forced to it.
Mhm.
I'm pissed to even be there. I'm still hurt. I'm on a crutch. I'm like, this is a waste of my time, but I have to do it. It's going on record, and it's going to be
Mhm.
part of my permanent record from now on. Somebody will probably try to sue us. That kind. So I know I'm going through all this stuff in my head as that character, and so just voicing that, I was kind of, I got into that person, and tried to make it where it was something that the other person, the psychiatrist, could respond to. And I tried to. It was nice how you did it too, and there was that play back and forth where I was kind of just telling the story, giving the facts. So I'm not a narrator, but I'm actually telling this person, like, okay, this is what happened, step by step. These are the details. And then
Mhm.
a couple times I got upset. I was able to
Mhm.
be like, oh my god, like this, and build up a little bit. And then she's telling me, calm down. And then I could, I'm sorry, and it was, so it made it real. That was fun.
You nailed it, by the way. That all came out amazing. I would have thought you two were in the same room recording that. It was so good.
Yes. Oh my god, when I heard the final, and because I didn't know who the psychiatrist was, she was
Mhm.
friggin' amazing. It was spot on.
Absolutely.
It felt like I was talking to her. Yeah, it was perfect. Jason did a great job putting that together.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Speaking of which, let's move to Jason a little bit. Jason, normally we have these situations where, after the people do the story, something horrible happens to them, right? This time, Augie's telling us that, um, this time Augie's telling us, sorry, Mike, it's on red. I don't know if you can hear me.
A little
Yeah.
choppy.
Okay. I don't know if it's going to switch over. Can I just go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Jason, so I just had a question for you. Um, Normally, we have the voice actors telling us about horrible things that happen to them after we do an episode. But here, Augie's telling us that the story was based on a horrible situation. I feel
Well, it's just I admit, just it's the great rooms. It all ties together somehow. It's some kind of nice little nugget of greatness and comfort, knowing that we, either we absorb or we come to the universe, which is really a key thing. So, hey, it is what it
it's funny because one of the things you hear all the time as a writer is some people will be like, write what you know. This is one of those situations where it sounds like that is a super huge part in what happened with the story.
Right. Sure. No fun. Suicide. By the way, David, I had a lot of fun listening to him talk and then putting it back and forth to Margaret, who was always a gem. By the way.
Yeah.
Margaret did such a fantastic job.
Mhm.
It always does.
Yeah, she really does. And it's nice too because I mean, she's somebody where she's she's a European actress, and yet I mean she's pretty quick with her recordings, isn't she?
Oh yeah. Usually turn over on her like if Grant sends her store on Monday.
Yeah, so it's she's definitely outstanding to work with, and I think I'm sure we'll be looking for more parts of her as well, in the future.
Yeah.
That's her. She nailed the tone of the character that I was looking for very well.
Oh man.
And of course, we'll kill David in the future.
Sounds good to me. I'm always ready.
Jason,
Yes.
we haven't had too many monster stories when you think about it. So, what did you think when we got to unleash our first werewolf story?
Well, I mean, I like monster stories. I mean, I'm still more of a Texas Chainsaw kind of dude, but I do like the traditional monster stories. Just like really got me into horror, like stuff. But it was fun. It was fun because even she had Augie had written the oh my god, why is the name escaping me? Is it the vampire one?
Yeah. What? How do you remember? Oh, Road Trip. That's what's called.
Thank you. See, it was just me either. So she had that one with a vampire, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was neat to have a more traditional style story. Like the other ones, he bounce around, and at the honestly, good read through. I read all the times before really. That's a werewolf. Guy, this that monsters. That's probably one of my favorites, honestly. It's werewolf. London. Yeah.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
That's this.
Nice. Well, with that in mind, why don't we ask that question? Augie, are you a fan of werewolves?
Yeah, it's weird. I've been kind of having this identity crisis since I realized I was the person to have had a story about a classic monster to your podcast. So I've been dealing with this thing also in my own writing too, because it seems like every holiday season I get in the mood for a zombie story, and I have vampires, and I've got ghosts, and I've got all kinds of stuff. So I've got all classic monsters, and I've been writing them the whole time without really realizing it. So I've never been a fan of them, though. That's the thing. Like, I thought Zombie was the dumbest thing. I've never cared to watch like the proper horror movies besides the classic slasher films and stuff. So I've never seen the original Dracula. I've never really watched Werewolf in London or anything like that. So I don't know a lot about classic monsters. I just kind of see them portrayed in movies, kind of tossed in there. Like, for example, Mrs. Wakefield was like hardcore inspired by the werewolves from the Harry Potter movies, because that just looked so painful to watch them transform, and I wanted to kind of capture that in the story.
Yeah.
So I don't really seek out a lot of classic monster stories, and I don't think I have a favorite werewolf movie. I watched the Teenage Werewolf High School something movie on a plane once, and that's the closest I ever got. to actually wanting to watch a werewolf movie. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it just kind of happened, and it seemed like it just fell into place in the context of where this story wanted to go. So
You need
yeah,
to check out
Are you
American
talking
Werewolf
about?
in London. You need to check that one out. And then
yeah,
classic ones, just always keep in mind Vincent Price. You can't go wrong.
yes, I love Vincent Price. He's fantastic.
Was that Teen Wolf you're talking about with
Yes,
Michael J.
Teen Wolf.
Fox?
Yep.
That
Yeah.
was good. I like
Where he
that.
plays
That was
basketball. Oh,
Yes.
stop it. That was so cheese.
it
It was
was
so
fun.
That was
cheesy.
all the
Anytime-
cheese.
Michael J.
I was-
Fox movies are on their own level, though. You know, I
That's
just
Yeah,
that's
like
a
true.
good point.
Of horror, let's not lie.
Yes.
yeah,
Yo, I got to
did-
put my 2 cents in.
yeah.
So,
yeah, Dave.
Jason already mentioned, that is my absolutely freaking favorite. It's not a
Just
scary
now
one.
this chat.
You gotta
So sorry.
watch it.
Yeah, we have-
It's not like a scary thing, but it was the best one. The first one, it did transformation right. It was just amazing where they had that technology to make it look like it was real and painful. Oh, so spot on. I remember being blown away watching that. And a little bit of comedy
Like,
in it as well.
it was all props. It wasn't any CGI or anything. It was all props.
Yeah.
It looked terrible. Yeah, it looked terrible. I remember that.
Well, I have to watch it now.
See, I like The Howling. I always thought The Howling was really good.
The Howling scared me for sure.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
scared.
it was fun.
You are dark. That was fun.
What can I say? You know, I probably watched it when I was like 5. You know, like you're not
Yeah.
supposed to, and I'm like, ah, yeah, you know, watching it through the lines.
See, my 5-year-old sneak out movie was Children of the Corn.
Oh,
Ooh.
that was
Yeah, that
you
messed
know,
me up, man.
you know what scared me? I watched was Beetlejuice. I
Uh-huh.
watched that when I was too young, and those sandworms.
Oh my god,
Oh.
they're terrifying.
Yes.
Not
Love that
now,
movie.
but then, oh man, I was terrified as a kid.
Yeah.
Things happen that you didn't think in your little kid mind should ever or could happen. You know, pulling your eyeballs out and
With that one in mind, you have to ask yourself, how many times is the Dune worm going to show up in a movie?
yeah.
Tremor,
Right.
Beetlejuice, you know, it's like,
Tremors. Yeah.
that's the Dune worm, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
He gets around.
Mongolian death worm or something, isn't it? It's a
Oh,
What
yeah,
are
it's in
those-
Star Wars too, isn't it?
yeah, but the Mongolian, it's like a what are those animals that
Mandalorian, I think. Mandalorian death worm.
Yes.
no, not Mandal, it's Mongolian.
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely Mongolian.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Anyway, what are the cryptids, right? That's
Yeah,
what it is,
yeah. Yep.
cryptid. I always wanted a story of a Mongolian death worm. But if you want a better chance writing your story, apparently call it a Mandalorian and get us sued by Disney.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, now I have no idea where I'm at.
on a side note, there, I'm looking forward to the Dune remake. So
Yeah, me too. I am as well.
I didn't know they were remaking it.
Yeah. So, Jason, this story didn't change a lot of locations and it had 2 actors. I would think it's a little tricky to give it the kind of audio that we normally do have in stories. So, how did you go about making sure that this story was brought to life like the other episodes?
yeah, it actually surprisingly enough, when I was reading, I said, "Oh, okay, this is like in one area." So I got to make it just these people talking. But then as you go on and you listen, you're like, okay, you got to figure out how to make this interesting because it's a great story, but it's just 2 people talking back and forth. And I'm used to obviously, walking, water gushes, explosions, clouds opening up, just everything, and that was nothing. So the story again was great. So it was solid. So all I did was just kind of build off of that. And then I just took little cues here and there to add small little sound effects just to kind of break things up and to just keep everybody going. Like for example, I drew from like my experience when I was in the Army with Dave there, and my MOS. So I was a military police officer, and I remember conversations over the radio. So I thought that it would be really cool if I would do radio chatter underneath the memory, and so that I
Yeah.
did that there, and then I just put in a couple sound effects randomly here and there, just kind of break it up. But I do think that the story and the acting was strong enough on its own. But yeah, it definitely was interesting because you're never happy with anything you make. I don't know. That's just me. And then after I listen to it,
Oh,
Yep.
same.
then I'm happy. Then I'm happy. I listen. Okay, I like it. But the whole time I'm working on it, I'm like, God, geez, this is the one. This is going to be the one that does me in. Really? Seriously?
I
And
was so worried about that too when I saw the script. I was like, what is Jason gonna do with this? There's nothing here. But it came out so amazing.
yeah, well, it's a testament to the story, and it's a testament to the voice talent. David and Margaret did a wonderful job. And then again,
Mhm.
it was just they just laid the groundwork. So you just got to listen to the cues in the story
Mhm.
to set the scene, and then you just add a sound effect here and there, and you just do your
Yep.
thing. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
It
and you
was
did
the
that perfectly. I gotta just say, because you don't do too much, because it could be overkill
Mhm.
and mess it up.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
you just hit a few little spots, and it was like, wow, it just made it come alive. It was nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I actually had a bit more in that. It's funny you say that. I had a bit
Yeah.
more and as I listened to it. Probably the 8th or 9th time I listened to it. I said, I gotta pull this out and pull that out because, yeah, hey, I appreciate that. Thanks. That's
Yeah.
what I thought too.
And Jason, I have to give you props. The pen clicking parts were just
Yes.
fantastic.
Oh
It
my
All
actually,
the
God.
writing and
serious.
scribbling. Oh, that was so
Yeah,
good.
it worked out really well. And I take a little bit of credit because all the times that Bob's writing in that book of his,
Mhm.
making you have to do the pens.
Definitely, again, I mean, after 8 years as a police officer in the United States military, you are, Augie said it correctly, you are debriefed. There's many times you sit
Yeah.
there and you have to give your witness statement or, you have to give your report and then they question you on your report, 'cause, it's CYA. They got to, cross their T's, dot their I's.
Yep.
And then, I remember several times being in these interview rooms and I'd be sitting there with IA and everything. And, they it would be just dead quiet, and the only thing you would hear is at that time, it was literal tape because this was in the '90s,
Yeah.
and they would have a tape running, recording it, and, you would literally just hear, like, the scribbles of the paper in between everything you said, and it got actually at points it got annoying, you're like, "Okay, how many
Yeah.
times are you gonna ask me the same dang thing? Can we get the hell out of here? The game's coming on. Let's go," so
I even got a taste of that in the episode itself. Like, I was like, okay, how many times are they going to use this pen sound effect? And then I was like, oh, it's working. Cool. That's a part of the thing.
Yes. Yes.
not nearly enough to be real.
Right.
That
But
pen
just
will
enough
be
to give you a flavor. Yeah.
Right.
Also, I think it's a great time to bring up that JM did a great
Oh my
job with the
God.
music.
Amazing job.
Jason, can you explain how the two of you work together? Like, how do you get on the same page? Do you work
Yeah.
on the episode first and send it to him? Does he ever tell you what he has in his mind? How do you time it? Can you kind of explain to our listeners how you guys work that out?
Yeah, no, we honestly, it's funny enough. I think me and JM are I think we think very similar. Um there's no communication prior to. What I do is I put the story together and I send it to him. But when I do put it together though, I do consider cadence. I do consider breaks in there, pauses. I put spaces in there for tension builds, breaks, scene changes, musical changes. I put big breaks in there, and that's pretty much it. It's just I build the scene and everything, thinking to myself how I would want to hear it with maybe some ambience or a little musical soundtrack, and what's going to really draw in the listener's ears. And I just send it to JM, and he's such a flippin' talent that no, I don't really ever have to really worry or talk to him about what he's going to do because he has a great vision. And yeah, all of you have heard it so far in everything he's done, including the Dismal Dirge, which is a patron exclusive. If you guys get a chance to hear that stuff, it's pretty sweet. So
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
he
awesome.
lets like it's pretty much like the whole soundtrack, right?
yeah, he
releases it?
takes each episode and he actually creates a song from the music. It's not just like bits and pieces. He actually takes the song and he creates. He takes the soundtrack from the song and he creates it into basically a song. So we're hoping at the end of the season, JM will have a full I hate to use the old term of CD, but a CD essentially, or a whole season worth of downloadable just music you can use for ambience or whatever. So it's pretty neat what he does.
Nice.
It's going to be awesome. Let's go back to Augie. Augie, I got
Yeah.
some questions about your story. Let's
Okay.
go into that. One thing I noticed about the therapist is that she had a lot of questions about the pronouns that the main character refers to Mrs. Wakefield by.
hmm
So is this to understand the nature of Mrs. Wakefield herself, or are the questions more based on the issue of how the pronouns of so many different people have been ignored for so long, including, I'm guessing, werewolves?
It was a little bit of a political statement just because now being a Twitter person, I've met so many amazing people that fall anywhere on the gender spectrum from just non-binary to something that doesn't even have labels yet. And the fact that pronouns are so important to somebody, especially in a world that is online and it's all like words and stuff, I kind of wanted to nod to that a little bit. But the majority of the reason I included it was because a lot of the times there's this weird fine line, especially when it comes to creatures like werewolves, where you're like, is it a person after they've transitioned? Or is it just a monster that deserves to be called an it? And I think that Officer O'Keefe was um what's the word? Unconsciously referring to Mrs. Wakefield for a while as an it, especially when he was frustrated or when he was talking about
Mhm.
when she was attacking him and, when he felt like he was not doing his job to the best of his ability or he felt scared or threatened or something. But then she called him out on it and he just kind of gradually changed and started to see her as more of a person who had tried to kill herself because she didn't want to be this person around her family. And, by the end, he's calling her specifically because the therapist kind of called him out on it. And he's like, oh, I mean, I guess maybe this is a real person because, she has emotions. And while I was there, she was transitioning in front of me into a werewolf. And, she was becoming something else. But that doesn't mean that she's any less human because at one point, she's screaming for them to kill her and like a little bit of her kind of shines through and she has a kid right there and her wife cares for her so much she's willing to hug this monster that could just rip her to shreds any second. So it was more geared towards trying to make the main character realize that just because it looked like a monster didn't mean that it actually was, if that makes sense.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. That's what I look at, for Raymond. He was a monster,
Mm.
despite how he
No
looked like
problem.
somebody
What I'm
really
here for.
care about. Um, so along that line of thinking, Miss Wakefield, I guess in a way, like has her wife assisting her with suicide. The shotgun was on the ground. They were there.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting. I never go
I
into specifics, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
we don't
Sorry.
know. I mean, she could have been trying to stop her,
Right.
or she could have been trying to help her. But the one thing that was really awkward about it was that her young daughter was in the closet when all this
Yes.
stuff happened, and she was scratched too. So
Mhm.
I don't know if maybe Mrs. Wakefield attacked her by accident and then decided she needed to end her life or whatever happened. But
Mm.
whatever, we're talking about some major trauma with that little
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Um, so with that in line, where do you think the girl is now?
Hmm.
And is she a werewolf too?
Hmm. I don't think she's a werewolf because the way I had it set up at the end made it seem like she was some kind of superior being. So the way I kind of had it in my head, even though I'm pretty notorious for just not having endings to my stories because I like people to kind of fill in the blanks on their own. But the way I saw it was that this little girl had grown up in a home in which this happened every single time the moon was full.
Right.
So, she was understanding what was going on and she knew that there was something different about one of her moms. And the other one was just a human normal. So, having a kid, especially with technology today, two women can have a kid. Just that's how it works. So she has genes in her that could turn her into a werewolf, but she's half human, half werewolf, and therefore has become extremely important in this kind of community of people who are aware of the existence of werewolves, like the therapist and like the other werewolves that are out there that I don't mention. But it's just kind of a community, and that's why the therapist at the end is like, you don't understand how important she is. Like, she has not turned into a werewolf yet, even though we've had multiple full moons. So we're not sure what's going on, and she's very important for us to understand our culture. So for you to have been trying to interfere with that is a big deal. And I don't think she is a werewolf, but I don't think she's safe. I think because of all of the ruckus that was going on, because Child Protective Services got involved, and she has abilities that a werewolf might have. So she's got advanced healing techniques or something like that. So she scrapes her knee at the playground and it heals before somebody can come over and check on it. And then all the kids start making fun of her. It's like this whole other series that I could probably write about it. But
Yeah,
she's
I
going
want to
through a
hear
lot.
more about this. When's this coming out?
Maybe I'll have to write a whole other novel that I tend to start
She
stuff.
just can't be in the gray rooms because we'll have to kill her.
Exactly, and I don't want that.
Jason. Oh man.
I mean, we're not above killing kids in the gray rooms, are we?
That's the best
Dave-
part of this. About this, you just everybody dies. That's the best part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everybody dies.
Mhm.
So just whoever you don't like, put them in your story. That's it.
Yeah,
Solved.
and don't hold back. Just I mean, if you want me to really just give it to them, I'll Fargo them for you. I don't care. I'll throw them through a wood chipper. I got no problem.
That was my favorite scene in Fargo.
There you go.
Jeez.
I was sad that they put Steve Buscemi in the wood chipper, but man, it was a cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
David Steele, if you were able to walk out of that room, and we'll say you didn't have a clue on the fact that she was a werewolf, do you think you would ever go back to that psychiatrist?
Definitely not. Yeah, just again being, and not even about how she was, because she was actually pretty cool, even as a therapist. If it didn't flip at the end,
Yeah.
but just no.
Uh-oh.
You still there?
Yeah, but I didn't hear your response. I'm sorry.
Can't block
The
that
whole
a little
thing?
bit
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's all right.
I heard that,
Yeah,
that she was cool, and then it kind of stopped.
yeah. So she was definitely a super cool therapist. So he would have appreciated her as a professional, but the whole main fact that him being forced to do that and to relive his horrible experiences, he's definitely resentful with that as a character, and I think he would definitely not go back.
It's
I figured it was
interesting.
because of all the writing.
I'm sorry.
I figured it might have been because of all the writing, just the nonstop scribbling.
Yeah, no, that's part of it for sure. Anything to do
thing-
with that, it's annoying. Yeah.
It might be between both you and Augie. One thing I kind of think about is this character, even though, he's a police officer, he did show, remorse, I guess you could say, for the situation. Like Augie
Oh,
said,
yeah.
he was starting to kind of, get the idea that, well, whatever she was, to be treated like a person. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so
Yeah, I think that was in his. He's definitely compassionate. I felt that.
Right.
I felt like a full character when I was doing that because of the way it was written. It kind of like it gave me a picture of who he was all the way around, and I felt like he's a compassionate man that just basically had a job to do and is very protective of his partner,
Yeah.
protective, and especially we had the chance to try to protect the child, and then also seeing the play as he was speaking about it, even it helped him by talking about the play between the two women and how they were kind of protecting each other and the one, and even though he didn't understand it, he definitely felt a compassion for that for sure.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I think honestly, we have that question too, where if he was bit, could he have become a werewolf himself?
Yeah, if he could have, as far as like Augie's writing, that he would become one. That's one thing in the story. But I felt like as his character, if he did, he'd probably try to take himself out. He probably wouldn't allow it.
Yep, I
Yeah.
agree.
I just wonder if he was like kind of worried about that, when he went to this therapist and was explaining things. Because I kind of feel like if he was thinking that and she was explaining that they're people, he might actually reconsider killing himself. But then she took him out anyway. So,
Yeah,
oh well.
I felt like all the way to the end, it was he didn't know. Like even though it may have
Yeah.
been in the back of his mind, he
Yeah.
was not allowing himself to express that. So when
Yeah.
she started changing, he's like, "Oh shit!" It's just
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god!" And it all dawned on him right that second, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
What are you gonna
Yeah.
See,
In
I would
my
have tried to beat her down with that crutch.
do? He may have, but she
Yeah.
pounced.
Well, the whole idea was like, the whole time he's telling this story, he's like at the end he ends up humanizing, Mrs. Wakefield that happens in the story, but then at the end he's just completely bamboozled by the therapist, and she
Yeah.
goes from being a human, a person who cares about what she's asking him. And, there's a couple of questions in there like, how do you feel about what your partner was going through? That must have been difficult for you. So she's humanizing herself and turns into a monster at the end, just as he's
Yeah.
getting over the fact that this monster is actually human. So it's kind of this switch at the end. And I kind of
Yeah.
wrote him in a sense that he wasn't even thinking about the fact that he could turn to a werewolf this entire time. He was just worried about the kid. He was worried about Mrs. Wakefield and her wife and what he saw and his partner and like how it affected her and all of this stuff, to the point where he wasn't even thinking about himself. And then at the end, he's like, oh, survival instinct should probably kick in, but darn this leg. And then it just.
Yeah.
Darn this leg.
Yeah.
I like that. So, Jason, how
Yes.
much did you enjoy the end sequence when you got to rip Mr. Steele to pieces?
But what I do. So
And
what
you
I
did it
do.
well. You did it well.
And
Thank you.
even what he did there too was surprising for me listening to it, because I laid down a whole bunch of like just screams and like gurgles and stuff, giving him a bunch of stuff to play with. And then what he did with it was like, whoa, that's not what I imagined at all. It's crazy.
It's not what I imagined either, to be honest.
Well,
It
and you see,
totally was. There's so many changes.
I was listening to you guys talk there, and I said, okay, well, what I pictured was, okay, yeah, this guy definitely traditionally would have turned if he would have been bit, but
Mhm.
he became a Subway sandwich. So I mean, you're
Yeah.
done, dude. You're over.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's awesome. Dave, do you think you were? Oh crap! I already asked that question. Never mind.
I'll
Well,
say yeah.
I love putting the squish and slosh noises at the end of episodes and kind of let them draw out with the music fade, and that way everybody
Yes.
kind of lets
So
that set
good.
in at the end. The last thing I remember hearing is just something just eating someone, and it forces you to get a visual, and that's what I really like.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
kind of
so
like
good.
an Aliens movie, almost like
Yeah.
they pounce on them and they eat them, and then somebody's listening to it.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Mhm. Better
Yum.
than the original ending, I will say. It was just, oh man. And the thing is too, like the way I had initially written the ending was like he was just kind of taken down a hallway and it was pretty vague as to what happened.
Mm.
But then I had some feedback on it that was like, this is not scary enough. You need to make this a little bit more intense and kind of make it clear that he dies at the end. And I was like, okay. So then I wrote it, and then it was even like kind of changed even more into a script. And I had written, he's fidgeting with the door handle and she's kind of approaching and slowly kind of stalking him and transitioning as she's walking. And then he's,
Mm.
on the ground and he tries to fight her off and whatever. But it was completely taken out of the script because it wasn't from his perspective or her perspective. And I was like, this will be interesting. What's Jason gonna do? And Brian was like,
Yeah.
he's got it. He's gonna do just fine. And he did, and he did so much better than I could have ever imagined. Like, I just even pictured what was going on in my head. It was intense. So
Good. That's the goal. That's the goal. If your mind's eye is in that room watching somebody chew him up like he's like a warm orange, then that's right there is, yeah, that's it.
Jason, do you see yourself as someone becoming the werewolf or someone trying to stop a werewolf?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
I see him becoming a werewolf myself.
Yeah,
Every
probably.
time he
Yeah, me
whispers
too.
and drops that voice down, oh my gosh, it triggers that response.
Well, I see him being a werewolf that hunts other werewolves because he likes the hunt.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
vicious through and through.
one of my fellow with a little A1 on there. Nothing bad. And some red potatoes. Fava beans.
Fava beans. Yeah.
Thanks,
So-
Dave. I appreciate that.
We think
By
too
the
much.
way, I'm going to make some ringtones. I'm going to make ringtones, guys. It's going to be answer your phone. It's your mom.
Oh my
It's your
god.
mom.
Stop it.
It's your mom.
That would be terrifying in the middle of the night.
It's your mom. Funny.
Oh, man.
So now I think we're at that point where we should start talking about some of the projects and things you're working on. So I'll start with you, Augie. Well, the
Okay.
stories you got down the pipeline, and also don't forget to tell us about your book of short stories that you've released.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I have a lot going on. Let's see. I'm currently in this weird transition phase between I don't know if I want to keep doing the podcast that I'm doing. So I'm making like a bunch of stuff to try and test out different avenues for myself. So I'm still doing my podcast, but I'm going to be going through the end of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series and then see kind of what I want to do since I have like 4 more movies to review. I host a podcast where I read my short stories, review horror movies. You did ask about that, but there you go. My collection of short horror stories is called Night Vision, and I recently released, well, I guess not recently, 2018, I released a anniversary edition, and recently I turned it into an audiobook, so you can get that on Bandcamp because Amazon is trash. And I turned that into an audiobook. That was super cool. So that's available for purchase wherever on my website, not wherever. I'm also working on a novel that I have been in the process of writing for the last almost 8 years. It's a super sci-fi-y, almost YA, new agey kind of thing, where it's set in a world after the Earth has basically destroyed itself, and some guy was like, "This is enough," and it's just this mass genocide, and all the survivors are taken to this island complex where it's all separated by technology levels, and there's like this government and this whole thing. It's very sci-fi. So I'm working on that novel at the moment. And today, actually, I finished writing my very first audio drama. It's called Linda Listens, and it's about a 43-year-old woman who, after the death of the majority of her family, decides to try and make a podcast to give advice to people. But of course, every question she gets is incredibly triggering, and she's dealing with her loud neighbor next door who keeps making all this noise. So one day she decides to go over and see what all the noise is about, and I can't tell you what happens after that, but it's a horror comedy podcast kind of thing, pretty intensely inspired by Calling Darkness, the podcast. I just absolutely love the mix of comedy and horror in that, so I wanted to do my own kind of thing. So I got a lot going on.
Let your
Okay.
producer know if they want to reach out to me. I'll loan them a bunch of squishy sounds. Come up with ballots hitting mangoes and running over boxes of raspberries.
You know, it's funny, you told me once that one of the squelching sounds you used was somebody eating a peach. And the first time I ate a peach after you said that, I recorded myself doing it and listened back. And I'm like, this is amazing. I have just unlocked a world.
Get yourself a little high def recorder out there, anybody, and
Mm.
just run around and randomly record things and play them back and put them in a different context in your mind, and it works. And it's usually gross.
Yep.
Nice. I want to eat a peach. That's the only thing I got out of this. I love peaches. I really do.
They are good.
I do. I
Peaches
love
for
myself.
me.
I was so there, dude. I was
Yeah.
in my head, I was going dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
David Steele, what other projects are you involved in?
Yes.
And you know,
Besides being the fill-in vocalist for the presidency of the United States.
yeah.
Great tune. Yeah, so you can find everything to start with at steelempire.com, and Steel is spelled with an E on the end, so it's STEELE empire.com. All our links. I have my own personal Twitter. You can talk to me personally. And then we have our Steel Empire Twitter. It's Empire Steel. We have Instagram, our email, of course. A few podcasts that we work on. We have our one that we started with my family. It's a family-friendly podcast. It is a quest for magic and steel. It is a D&D tabletop role-playing game that my daughter runs. She's our GM, game master, and we play the game. And it's basically us playing, but we turned it into more like an audio drama, improv comedy show. So we act out the characters, we do our character voices. There's 6 of us, and it's a lot of fun. It's on its 4th year. We've changed a few different characters throughout, but we have a blast with that. We get a lot of good feedback, and we just keep doing it. It's a fun time. I also do an audio drama. It's called Arc City, ARKCITY. Season 1 is complete, and there is a couple bonus episodes as well that you can check out. Again, links are on steelempire.com. I am in the process of, we have the second season already written, but I kind of had a life event and kind of slowed down a little bit. You know, I know Brian, you know what that's like. So things slow you down, but you keep on going, just one step at a time. So I have a bunch of voice actors already laid down tracks. It's just I have to now get into the studio and get back on track and make it come to life like Jason does. So that's the hard part, really. And then I just started another one too. It's a year in the life. A friend of mine, 2 of us, we're going to take the whole year of 2020. We just recorded our first one for January, and it's just a once a month show. And we're going to talk about, January, what it means, where the word came from, what's the animal of January, the constellation kind of deals, birth signs, and then talk about also like one thing about that month. So January was new beginnings, and then we kind of just rap about that. And we ask people, listeners, to comment and add their 2 cents so that we can add it into the show. So a lot of fun for us. But yeah, steelempire.com. Join the journey. Oh, and I do have to say also, sorry, I love doing voiceover work. I love doing audio dramas. Love being a part of the Gray Rooms. So much fun. Every time I get hit up, reached out to, I get so excited. I'm like, all right, cool. What do we get to do now? I'm also in a couple other ones. I do Copper Heart, which is an excellent like sci-fi thriller, I guess you could say. It
Sarah
is
Ruth
a
Thomas, I think,
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
award for that.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, it's a steampunk as well, and yeah, she's in that. And I also play. I think she does an AI voice, and then I also play like her opposite. I'm an AI as well, kind of like my name is actually Eris. I think her name is Iris. I forget exactly, but it's kind of neat. It's fun. So it's real monotone. I'm just kind of this AI voice without real emotion. So it's kind of fun to do that. And then I also do a small one that's not as well known, but it's called Mandible Judy, and it's a nice little thriller drama. I play a younger guy in that, and kind of like a horror thriller. So it's fun, a lot of fun.
Nice, David Steele. You are a busy guy.
Busy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. That
Good
sounds
times, man.
awesome.
Yeah,
Honestly,
you were just in you were just in a podcast event, weren't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, a couple times a year. Yeah, I do some podcast things. I'm actually speaking in March. I'll be in Florida at Podfest.
Yeah.
Is a big one in Orlando.
Gotta figure out
Went
how to
there
get us
last year. Yeah, I take the whole week actually. Bring some of the family. We hang out at Disney, and then the weekend it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the convention. And I'll be speaking. I'll actually be talking about Adobe Audition in editing for podcasts. So.
And if anybody, I'm just reading online here now. If anybody's interested in meeting David, he will buy you a beer.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's not online. I put that in. It's on the wiki. I don't know how true that is.
No, and I mean, if anybody wants to go to Podfest, I mean, it's in March, so they should be able to hear it in this show. But I do have a couple tickets. I will actually pay for your Podfest conference. If you can get down there, or you're from the area and you want to hang out, I have a ticket or two that I can give out. So,
Uh-oh.
Nice.
just reach
That's
out.
awesome.
Podcast.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So that's super
Oh, it's amazing. It's a whole nother world. It's
Oh, wow.
if you love podcasting, going to some pod conferences.
I really
there's
wanted
a
to go to
bunch of 'em.
Podtails, but it didn't work out for me. So that
Yeah,
would be
I know
super
your feeling.
We had a lot fall on our plate for that one, man.
That was devastating.
Yeah, I saw that one. That's called Podfest, right?
Yeah.
The
They've-
one in Florida is Podfest. There's another
Podfest.
one in the Philadelphia area, which is Indie Podcast Conference.
Yeah.
That's another one I go
Mm.
to and speak at. Yeah, and then there's Podcast Movement. It's another one that moves from state to state around the country. And then there's a couple other big ones too that I haven't. That are like over in the West Coast that I've never been to.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Podtails makes it back. I'd like to try to get there, but I saw that Podfest last year, and I was like, "Ooh, Florida in the winter."
Oh, it's great
I mean,
in
so
March. Yeah, perfect.
I might have to try to figure out how to get down to that sucker.
Yeah, man.
I'll tell you what, Dave. I think you should look into having Mr. Gray as an antagonist in one of those future family-friendly role-playing things you do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wrong.
Yo, he scares me. Stop, Jason. Stop
Put him
it.
in there. You know, you got a nice evil necromancer or something. You know,
And we do that. So yeah, he could definitely
Yeah.
do it. for
Well,
sure.
it's kind of funny. I just started doing a TikTok, and
Oh, boy.
one of the things I do on one of the things. Well, Chrissy got me into that crap. I never. I wanted
I
nothing
wasn't
now
to
you're
do with it,
addicted.
man.
Yeah.
And
I
she
wasn't
sent
gonna
me
do
this. She sent me this TikTok, and she's like, "We'll do this." I said, "Why have to download the app? I don't want nothing to do with the app." And so,
Yeah.
anyways, I download it, and that format's amazing. I love it. I have fun watching just the goofy videos on there.
Mhm.
But so I just did something called the Sinister Sayings. I just find something that's literally a hand-drawn picture that moves, and the voice is just this, but then dropped with everything else on it. It's really cool. It's actually got quite a bit of views. So
Wow.
yeah, my
You're a TikTok
TikTok
star.
Mr. Gray.
Mr.
Nice.
Gray.
Oh,
All right, I didn't know that. That's pretty sweet.
Now you do. And knowing it's half G.I. Joe.
Oh, geez, knowing is half the battle.
now we know that Jason has a secret life. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That- oh man, I know too much of those secret parts of his life he doesn't want us all to know about.
Well, he usually calls me on those parts. I'm like, hey man, I have to call you right back. I'm in the middle.
I didn't mean that, but yeah, that's another one.
You see, the thing is, I'm not describing it. I'm gonna leave it open for everybody. I'm gonna let your mind wander, you sickos.
Hey, is your phone vibrating? Because guess what? Mr. Gray's at it again. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Behind the Door. Thank you so much, Augie. Thank you so much, Dave.
Of course.
Welcome.
You guys are so great. I know we can't wait to work with you guys again. And it's just such a fantastic amount of fun that we've had discussing everything with you, and also working and working, listening to David's stuff, working with your material, Augie. So thank you again so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure's ours.
Yeah, I don't think Brian's also from my perspective. I didn't think Brian was hammering it from my side there, but I absolutely loved working with you guys. David, you do a wonderful job. I love your delivery. I've actually loved working with you since the first time I heard you in Ice Station Bravo. I thought that was I thought that part and you were married perfectly together, and just like with this as well. I loved your your candor. I loved the tempo. I loved your delivery. You did a great job, Augie. Wonderful story. As always, I love working with the people that I get the opportunity to work with. Brian included on that. No, Brian included on that. I enjoy getting the opportunity to work with all the just wonderfully talented professional people. So thanks again. It's an absolute pleasure from us. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I also want to thank you, Augie, too, for, changing everything into a script was like the first thing that I started working on coming back from the stroke. And so it really helped me to work on those main episodes. And really, I didn't have to do anything with your story. I just had to, get it into a script form. And it took me a while, but it's what I needed to do to get me back into doing the writing. So thank you so much for that opportunity.
Well, you're welcome, but I'm not taking any credit for you bouncing back as fast as you did from having 2 strokes, okay?
Yeah.
That was
Well,
all you.
still though, yours was the first thing I was working on. So
Alright.
without that, I would have still been worrying about everything. I was able to work on the first episode, the main story, because of you. So I'm very thankful for that.
Nice.
Oh, you're welcome.
Gray Rooms, it kills and it heals.
Thank you,
Put
Gray
that on a
Rooms.
t-shirt.
It binds us together.
That's true. That's a good one. We should buy a
Cassie,
t-shirt.
you jump right on that. By the way, we got to make sure we give credit real quick, Cassie, as well, because I don't know if you had the
Yes.
opportunity to look at that artwork.
Oh my god,
Oh my
it was
God.
amazing.
Yes.
She is a Rembrandt, a Mozart. She is an absolute goddess on that artwork. I mean, her vision is just profoundly amazing. And then Brooks animated that. So
Dude,
No
that was
way.
so creepy.
Yes.
I loved
Completely
it.
agree. Yeah.
It's like you didn't even notice it was animated until she blinks, and then it's like,
Yes.
oh my god, what happened?
Yes.
It was so good.
I
The
keep
Grey
trying
Rooms
to
have done
kiss
it
that
again.
moving face.
And we
You know,
didn't get a chance to talk about it either, but Brian, the main story for this episode, taking the leap that it did, was amazing. And having David Cummings in it and all of the other stuff that we kind of found out about, I wish we'd had time to talk about that, but seriously, it was amazing.
Oh, thank you. And
as a geek like me, it still blows me away that I get to work with David Cummings. He is the reason
Right?
I decided to start podcasting. So there you
He's
go.
so cool. He's
one
so
thing
cool.
I will say, because I don't know if we ever actually commented on this, but we actually are spending all of our behind the doors talking about all the authors of the short
Oh.
stories. When we
I
do,
missed that memo, I guess.
well, yeah, no, it's fine. I don't think we actually mentioned it. I think we just been talking. What we're gonna do is, just like we did last season, we're gonna go and take that. If you'll remember, we did like a Raymond logs thing where it just kind of had like all 12 of the main season episodes and put them all
Yeah.
together. We'll be doing that, and then we're gonna do the next episode. We're gonna have behind the door with me, Jason. I want to invite Sarah Ruth Thomas. You know, we might have Graham. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But the thing is we're gonna kind of go through episode 1 to 12, and then of course that'll get everybody ready for episode 13. So yeah, you were totally good. You don't worry about it. We weren't planning on talking about me.
Okay. Well, you
Or-
deserve
or
to be
other
talked
stories.
about. Just saying.
Thank you. Thanks. But yeah, no, we'll talk. We don't want to waste any time. We just want to focus on the author. We want to focus on the voice actor, and that's something where we spent too much time talking about other things. I think in season 1, and maybe people didn't get to say everything they wanted to say, and so we just want to focus on you guys.
Well, I appreciate that as the author.
Well, we appreciate you, because without this doesn't just go out to press and company. This goes out to all that we have talked to and all that we're going to talk to. Without you, there is no Gray Rooms. So
Aw.
that is very important. That is, so Brian absolutely nailed it on the head, that this is to showcase your talents and what you have done to make us look as good as we do. People like us, and that's not because necessarily what we do. That's because of what we have to work with, and that's you guys. So thank you.
That's
Aw.
right. So don't forget about season 3. If you are thinking about writing a story, jump on that. You can go
Yes.
look on our Twitter.
Yes.
You can email submissions@thegrayrooms.com, and if you have any questions about what kind of stories we're looking for. But we end our submission period April 18th, so you still have plenty of time to go work on a story. We're taking 12 stories plus maybe a few here and there for Patreons and preseason stories. So just send us our stories.
I will personally kill your face and eat your kids if you don't submit your story to the Grey Room Season 3.
Thank you so much for posting
That'd be
that,
the
Augie.
You're welcome.
I love that. I didn't think you were actually going to do it, and I saw that and I laughed so hard.
Well, now I got to
Oh
keep
my
my
God.
promises, so.
All right, guys. You all have a wonderful night. Thank you again,
Thank you.
audience members, for listening. You guys are so great.
Absolutely.
See ya.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.
Stay gray.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind